welcome back to the Character Corner with your hosts, Chris and Deepam here, and we're here to do part 2 of our Thor Character Corner. We already put part 1 out there. If you're listening to this, we're going to put this one out right when Thor, like probably a couple days before Thor Ragnarok hits. And yeah, I don't think we didn't have any new reviews. We didn't get any new emails, so we'll be able to jump right into this one. And before we do that, I think that so the first part we did with this one is we did Thor part 1, and there's a lot of Thor to cover. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I think what is it? The issue 700 already dropped this week.
It dropped this week, yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Thor to cover. All right, and so we skipped over a lot, but I think we're getting the big crux of the character, right? So that first character corner we did was basically covering Ragnarok and dealing with basically the early depiction of Thor, Asgard, Odin, things like that. Getting into Ragnarok, and then we ended it with Thor Volume 2, where Thor basically gives him to being a god, kind of like his father was, right?
He's the All-Father.
Yeah, he basically became the All-Father. And then, we had him breaking Ragnarok, the cycle of Ragnarok, and ending it there. And I think from that point, and that was around, that was like, what, 2006? It might have been a little bit before then.
I want to say 2005 or 2004.
Yeah, 2004, 2005.
He's off the table for all of Disassembled, for all of House of M, and for all of Civil War.
Right, because in Civil War, Civil War number 7, they bring in the clone that number 7 is where the clone gets destroyed. Well, they clone him during Civil War. I think Mjolnir comes back to Earth, I think in Fantastic Four 536 and 537, and I think we covered that when we covered Doom, because that's how Doom escaped hell.
Yes,
Doom escaped hell because he witnessed the falling of the gods during Ragnarok, and basically hitched a rod in the tail of Mjolnir. And is that great scene of him showing up in the throne room with all the Doom bots and him killing the guy there. It's like Doom needs a bath. It's just like, this is great. Yeah, Doom is great. I always love fucking Doom, right? So yeah, so Thor's off the table and for a long time, and so I first want to start with that just because you hear all this dumb shit, right? With these SJWs are ruining Marvel now. We're gonna get into some of that stuff later on because it just has to, because it doesn't make any sense. But they took Thor off the table for 2 years, and not like they do it now, where you have Jane Foster as Thor and you have Odin's son and he's still around. Like, Thor was gone. The real Thor was gone. You had a cyborg clone throughout all of Civil War. And so when people sit there and go, "Oh, well, you've never done this before," they do it all the fucking time. What are you talking about?
Same thing about Captain America. It was like, hey guys,
they killed him.
You can say that if you've never read a comic book before. What are you talking about?
Right. We've done this before. This is ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, I think that is one thing when we go to these character corners, is one of those things that I think people start telling on themselves, because we start reading this stuff and you're going, hey, wait a minute, this is a conversation people were having, and when was this comic written? This was like 2005. Like, what are you guys talking about? This is new. They've never done this before. Like, this is 2005. They're doing the same thing. Like, and you know what?
They did it 10 years ago.
Right. And the thing about it was, the writing, if they do it, every time they do it, they get better at it. Right. The writing gets better into it. So, but yeah, so I think that these next sets of issues we're going to get into, and again, there's a lot of Thor issues here. I think they really, and there's going to be some in between here, but I think they really, we're going to really focus on the JMS stuff. J. Michael Straczynski. Which, by the way, it took me the longest time. I've known this for years now, but I don't want to admit how long it took me to realize that this was the same guy who also brought me Babylon 5, which is why I like, because I love fucking Babylon 5. Like, that is one of my favorite all-time TV shows. And so the fact that he created Babylon 5, which also I definitely believe him in saying that Paramount and them stole some of his ideas for Deep Space Nine, which is why I like Deep Space Nine so much. I side with him on this one. I side with JMS on this. But like, when you read his Thor stuff, you're like, this is why I like the Thor stuff. I just like your stuff. I like what you write. So we're gonna focus on that, and then also the Jason Aaron stuff. Like, again, there's some stuff in between. There's definitely, I think Matt Fraction wrote some stuff. Karen Gillan did some stuff in there as well.
And it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine, but it's sandwiched in between two really great two writers who wrote really, really great Thor stuff. And so it's hard to stand out amongst that, the pillars of greatness that they stand with that stuff in between. But like, to me, when you're reading, when I was reading through this stuff, I realized that now that Thor has broken the cycle of Ragnarok, these stories, particularly the JMS stuff and Jason Aaron story, they really try to get into why Thor, the god of thunder, is the god, why he is such an important god, and why he matters more than any of the other gods. And I think this also goes into why the Thor movies are hit or miss for some people, and why some people think that there's too much humor, or I think people need to realize that in order to do Thor right, you basically make him Jesus. And I'm not sure how that goes over in the mainstream. Like, I'm not sure.
It's you know what it is? Superman's always been a Jesus analog.
Right.
But once you realize that Thor is Superman and God.
Yes.
Which is how JMS and Aaron wrote him.
Yes.
You're like, wait a second. Hold on. And we'll talk about Aaron's beautiful deconstruction of the character later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
We'll start with JMS because, and I'll be honest, I think in my head I had almost discounted this run a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's the first time, and even as much as I love Simonson's run, I love all Simonson's run on Thor, it felt like high sci-fi.
Right.
While he was doing it, JMS made you feel like you were dealing with gods again.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that, because even when you look into how they do it in the MCU, they kind of treat him almost like an alien, right? Like, oh, he's not really. Right. He says he's a god, but you're really just an alien, and Asgard is in space, and that's what it is. Like, the reality is, no, he is God. he is God. He is a god. Thor is a god, and the way JMS does this, he writes him as that, and it's not like how Jurgens did it in Volume 2, where you write him as a god, he fully embraces being a god and becomes like the All-Father again, where it's this distant godlike figure who doesn't understand man because his human side had been gone. No, JMS brings him back. Thor returns, and they start the numbers over again. So Thor number 1 again. So people always complain about the numbering. This always happens. Always happens in comic books. They always restart the numbering, then eventually they go back to the old numbering. So Thor number 1 comes back, and first of all, they bring back Donald Blake. So he's once again merged with Blake, and it matters because you're going to see Thor as a god who still has his human connection, and you see how it's great to read the JMS stuff and later, and then compare that to how he was written when he no longer was it Jake Olsen? When he was no longer connected to that Jake Olsen, he no longer had that human part of him connection in there. It's so interesting to read how he did it, because once again, I think in issue 2, he restores Asgard in Broxton, Oklahoma, and Asgard stays there. I guess they were calling it New Asgardia, or were they actually calling that Asgard?
So they were calling it. It was just Asgard. When he originally recreates it. So the thing I like about the first 3 issues here is the first issue. It's Thor in the Void.
Yeah.
And it immediately, it's the thing that you and I was talking about Marvel. the past stories did not happen. They did not matter. Ragnarok occurred. The cycle occurred again. But once again, the wheel was finally broken by Thor. He had broken the cycle. It was supposed to have ended.
Mm-hmm.
But while the rebirth had begun anew with Thor, like this is why if Thor seems overpowered at the beginning of this run, it's because he is. He has taken the Odin force. He has become the god of gods. He's become the All-Father. And he's able to literally will himself back to existence because he says, the gods do not exist, or mortals do not exist because the gods will it so. Gods exist because the mortals do.
Mm-hmm.
And because Jake Olsen, whatever remained of Jake Olsen believed in Thor, that was the anchor, and that was able to recreate the symbiotic thing. The second was the second issue is they create where will we live? Where will the gods reside? And Thor, through the power of the Odin force, is able to bring back Asgard, like you said, on this plot of land in Broxton, Oklahoma. They didn't tell him that it's illegal to have it on this land, so he raises it 8 feet into the air.
It's one of the things that when you see him make Asgard again on Earth, you immediately go back to what happened, and you're like, oh my god, the cycle's starting over again. But then you realize it's different this time because he's not trying to. He's like, okay, no, you're right. You know what? We're here. We're raising Asgard on Earth. I gotta do this. So at one point, the farmer whose land he raised Asgard on, he was like, the farmer comes over, was like, yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Thor, but you're on. They said that I should probably talk to you because this is on my land. He's like, well, how much money do you want? It's like, what do you mean, how much money? Like, get a ladder. And he opens up the vaults to Asgard, and it was like, take as much as you think you deserve for this land. And the dude's like,
as you want, do not come back.
Right, do not come back. And dude's like, just like back the truck up.
Pull around the truck. Well, what about the pull around the truck?
And another one I like is I want to say it's either like issue 4 or 5 when the postman comes by and he has a letter to drop off for the town hall, and so there's no like Asgard doesn't have an address and they don't have like a mailbox, so he puts a mailbox down and puts like one Asgard lane. Puts the like it shows a stark difference between how Thor when he didn't have that human connection was the All-Father, how he reacted to putting Asgard on Earth and why he did it. Because remember when he brought Asgard to Earth, he did it so that he could be closer to the people he was God to, right?
Right.
It was a completely different thing here where he's of Earth. He's as Donald Blake. He's comes in as Thor.
Does that also think about who he's been revealed as his true mother?
Right.
He has deeper ties to Earth, which we see, in the issue where he brings back the Warriors 3.
Yeah.
Because that's what this becomes now. Now it becomes an epic journey of Thor awakening the other gods. And the first one he does is Heimdall, and it's very powerful, and it's done on the heels of Katrina, and it's well done. But that's not the story in the book. The story is about him whipping Iron Man's ass.
Oh, because remember, Tony got a brilliant idea to clone Thor, and Goliath died because of this. So
that was a horrible idea.
Yeah, very horrible idea. And so you get you get Thor being confronted by Tony, and Tony trying to tell him, "No, you can't do this. You can't you can't build Asgard on American land. We have problems. We got to do this." So Thor's like, "Yeah, things have changed. You have hunted down those who we once fought beside and called comrades, killed or imprisoned those who opposed you, regardless of their previous loyalties. Surely this would be offense enough, but you went further, much further. The entire time, there's more lightning coming down, and
the rain is picking up.
Right, right. You took my genetic code, and without my permission, without my knowledge, used it to create an abomination, an aberration, an insult, and this you told the world was me. You defiled my body and desecrated my trust and violated everything that I am. Is this how you define friendship? Is it?" He then proceeds to whoop the shit out of Tony, and it is the greatest thing ever. Like Tony gets hit. He's like, "You've been working out." No, there's only one difference. in this time and in this place, I am no longer holding back.
Yeah.
Oh, it is so good. So
Tony did not want those problems.
Not at all. Give your orders and ultimatums to those who choose to obey or are too cowardly to fight, not to me. And learn again the difference between a god of thunder and a mortal man in a metal suit. As for your masters, since power is all they understand, tell them that Thor says this: if any mortal comes uninvited to Asgard on behalf of those who suppose themselves to be powers, within the hour they will learn what true power is. He then tells Tony to walk back home because Tony's like, "How much?"
Before this scene, before that speech, he hits him with an EMP.
Right, right. So Tony has a suit that has no power. He's like, "Oh, my power doesn't. How much to get back home?" He's like, "Walk." He's like, "Well then." It is so good, and then he finds that the one man, like there was
before that, as Tony's leaving, one last thing. At this moment, I have more pressing business to attend to, but in time to come, be assured that you and I will finish discussing your violation of my person, my genetic code, and what was once a friendship that I valued.
Right.
If there's any questions to what Thor JMS is writing, it's Old Testament God Thor.
Yes.
Like, if there's any question, Old Testament Thor.
Yes. It is so good. And like you said, he restores Heimdall, who was this angry man. Again, so all the Asgardian gods and all of their souls and bodies were bound to these mortal souls. So and Thor, due to the Odin force and the power he has the ability to unbind these people, to bring the Asgardian gods back. So the first person he brings back, he finds and brings back is Heimdall. The next are the Warriors 3. They're all the way, and you can tell when you see them, you're like, oh, this is obviously the Warriors 3. Like this is, he's like, yo, so you three just found each other? You came to this place to defend this village? You guys just happened to? He's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. And you just tell that it was them, and so he goes on a mission to bring all these people back. He's still trying to find Sif, which becomes his own thing here. I can't remember what issue it is that he ends up. He's tricked into restoring Loki, who comes back. Issue
5 or 6 because it's where the destroyer armors come to life.
Yes.
And Thor has to battle it, and in battling it, he figures out the best because the armor had captured all these people who had God souls inside them. And while Thor was trying to be, prior to this, selective about who he restored, it felt like his hand had been forced by the destroyer to restore them all at once. He didn't have time to sift through them. And that's when he brought back Loki and some other undesirables like Hela.
Mm-hmm. Right. Who are now, walking the earth. But it was all Loki's plan. And begin with, because Loki gets restored into his body, and this is where you get Loki as a woman. Which again, when you see these things again, and this goes back to, because I remember when this happened, you just get the people going, "Oh, Loki's now a woman now. What are they doing?" And stuff like that. But when you read the story, you find out that it clearly is a trick by Loki. He picked this body for a reason, and Loki has picked this body to kind of present himself as being different. Like, oh, I've changed and I'm different, and I'm trying to be. He positioning himself as an ally, to Loki. It's like, hey, you broke Ragnarok, you broke the cycle, and I was part of that cycle to bring about Ragnarok. So it's different now. Like, you broke the cycle. I'm no longer that person. But we later find out that this is all just one big scheme.
It's a damn lie.
It's all a lie. It's one big scheme of Loki. And the body is really that of Sif. I mean, it's changed a little bit, but it's really Sif's body he's using, while Sif is stuck in the body of an old woman who's set to die. And what happens with this is once Thor has brought back all these people, these Asgardians, the true motive of Loki starts unfolding his plan, and his plan involves certain things. One, I can't remember if before this did we as a reader, did we know that Balder was Thor's brother?
No.
Okay. I couldn't remember if this is one of the things that everybody else knew, but Balder didn't know. So Loki reveals this. Loki reveals that Baldur is actually Thor's brother, and that's why Odin.
He's an Odinson.
He's an Odinson, yeah. And this is why Odin, Thor, and all of them were so protective of him, and that Thor knew as well. And this is why they've all been so protective of him. And if you think about it, to be perfectly honest, Baldur's technically the real heir to the throne, because his father is Loki. I mean, his father is Odin, and his mother's actually Freya. This Thor's mother actually isn't Freya. He's technically the Jon Snow of this family. He's a bastard. That's your mother's not. Your mother wasn't Freya. Like, you're not technically next in line. It should technically be Baldur. Like, going by. I mean, I understand why not, but technically,
yeah. And the thing is, they make a really compelling reason as to why not, because Baldur's death is the one that kicks off Ragnarok.
Right, and that's why everybody protected him, and why nobody wanted.
That's why you make him the son of the king. He's a target.
Exactly, and so they explain why he's not. And so what happens is, because at this point Thor is king, so because there is no Odin, and Thor does have the Odin force, but this makes Baldur. They eventually make him prince. They eventually make him the Prince of Asgard. And so, but again, this is all revealed to be part of Loki's plan.
Which is a pretty brilliant fucking plan.
Yeah, you want to go through it? Because it's actually, and here's the thing, it also involves Doctor Doom, which I just fucking love. So
it's all Doctor Doom in time travel.
Yes. Oh, which is, just go ahead. I'll jump in. Yeah.
So it's revealed early on when Loki is discussing Baldur's lineage to him. He reveals how Odin's father died. Odin's father, Bor, created the universe, and he was taught Odin everything he knew. He taught him how to hunt, how to lead, how to be a king. One day they were fighting frost giants, and Bor went off to chase one. But when Odin found him, he'd been transformed by magics beyond those of frost giants into living snow. He'd been blown away and said, "Son, restore me." But Odin didn't. Odin knew that as mortals have the phrase, "You must kill your masters, kill your fathers," we use it metaphorically as saying that we must throw off the shackles of the expectations of older generations and become something new. For the gods, it's literal. You're destined to kill your father to replace him. So Odin saw the falling of Bor as almost that being removed from his hands. It was no longer his fault, no longer his problem. But now this snow, this force, it lived with Bor. Bor's soul still lived on Midgard in the snow, which is an important note.
Yes.
Then Odin has his first child. He's read a prophecy about his first child, but knowing that his child, one, must not only kill him, but two, will bring him back to the end of the gods. He hides the child's identity, names him Baldur, and has him raised elsewhere. Of course, Odin falls. Conspicuously, Thor never aims to resurrect him throughout the series, a point that's made many, many times again.
Right. At one point, he goes into Odin's sleep, and he has this whole vision, and he has to sleep, and he's confronted by Odin's ravens, and then he sees even that in the void, Odin is still fighting Sutor, like he does it every day. And I thought that was really great, right? So.
And like something else about those issues, that's the first time in the JMS run that I realized how much I loved Olivier Coipel's art.
Yes.
Like, I was like, oh, this is still good art, but like, I think I'm addicted to Olivier. Like,
yeah.
It's really good, clean, beautiful art. But you're right. He discusses with himself as to why he hasn't brought back his father. Part of it is that same, you must kill your father to move on. And then it's revealed that Loki is going to go to Hela and say, "I need your help." Says, "What? I need to travel through time." To do what? To do things that have already happened, but I haven't done them yet. So if you just please let me do this.
Right. I like they definitely happen. They definitely happen, but I need to do it now. So
And so she sends him back in time, and you just see Loki talking to a frost giant. You're like, oh, what's going on here? But then you realize that's the fight that Bor was turning to snow in, and that Loki's the one who did it.
Yes.
He then fast forwards through time and meets a young version of himself and explains to him how to be free of the frost giants, how to be adopted by Asgard, and how to set yourself up as a prince to destroy it all. Because when Odin takes him in, he says, "I'll kill you all, I'll kill you all." And Loki the older speaks to Loki the younger and says, know that they will not differentiate between the wails of a child emotional and the prophecy of someone who knows.
Mm-hmm.
And it frames the whole Loki thing in a whole crazy, evil new light.
Yeah, he's been doing that. It's all been his plan since a child.
It's all been his plan. And it's crazy and it's wild and it works. And it's so well written and so well tightly plotted. And then you get, like you said, in issue 600, they bring back Boar. Loki brings back Boar in New York City. And he enchants him so he can't be reasoned with.
Yeah.
And Thor, using the Odin Force, is forced to kill his own grandfather. But in doing so, he exploits a loophole that Loki was aiming for. And now that he's killed the king of Asgard, Thor is stripped of all rank, all title, and all presence on Asgard.
Yeah, Boulder becomes king. Boulder has to exile Thor. And Thor goes along with it. Thor doesn't fight it. He's like, no.
He knows he has to.
Yeah, he's like, no, you have to do. And I think, if I remember correctly, Boulder doesn't want to do it. He's like, no, you have to do this. I admit to it. And there's something that has to be done for the sake of Asgard. And again, it goes to show you there's a difference between this Thor and the Thor we had before Ragnarok, right? That he's like, no, this has to be done. So, yeah.
100%. He understands the gravity of everything that he's involved with. And so from there, Thor is exiled, and Loki takes his place as an advisor to the throne. And he advised that they move to fucking Latveria. Not good advice. And by the way, while this is happening, there's a man who's fallen in love with a goddess.
Which is, can I just say that was actually a pretty, I actually enjoyed that.
It's beautiful.
It's actually a really well done story.
It's so well done. You're like, how could a man and a goddess fall in love? And they do it. And and all the questions you have, they get answered. Like, he goes to Latveria and he tells them that you can't work with Dr. Doom. Yeah, like this guy, he was working in this is the thing that makes them moving Asgard to outside of this town, in his town of Oklahoma, Broxton. Wilm, who is the goddess he falls in love with? It starts with a K. It's Kelda. So he falls in love with this beautiful goddess, Kelda. He's basically working in a diner flipping burgers, right? His name is Wilm, and he decides he's gonna follow this woman. So he follows them to Latveria, and like you said, he serves as the audience, as a reader, going, "Hey," he's talking to King Bold. He's like, "Hey, listen, I know you're king and everything like this, but you do realize you can't trust Doom, right? Like, he's Dr. Doom. He can't be trusted. This is not the guy that you can trust." You know, it's like, I don't know what you're thinking here, but yeah, no, this doesn't work out well for you. So you got to stop this. So it serves well to be that foil, to be that guy to tell us how bad this all is. Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can find the part where he says it's like, let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find the actual issue where he talks it when he talks to. Well, you look for it. The story of Bill intersects with the rest of our main story because he is the one who catches Doom tearing apart Asgardians to find the secret of immortality. Yeah. Because the other thing is, while Asgard is living in Midgard, the gods can be killed.
Yeah.
Yep. And Thor is doing, or excuse me, Doom is doing so with great frequency. Bill tries to warn the rest of Asgard. He's hunted down and killed and avenged by Baldur the Brave, god of light, king of Asgard, who learns that they must now wage war against Doom. So now you've got Asgard versus Doom.
Yeah.
Who has on his side a bunch of monstrosities taken and built into Asgardian corpses.
Yes. And then he also builds himself a Doombot / destroyer armor, which...
Oh, yeah, because why wouldn't he? He's that cocky. Oh. And only because Thor returns from exile do they win.
And there's a couple... Right, and a couple other things that happened before that, too. So, in his fight with Boar, Mjolnir is not destroyed. It's broken.
Cracked.
It's cracked. And it always got it interesting because when we change it back between Donald Blake and Thor, when he turns to Donald Blake, he has it as a stick. So he would turn back into Donald Blake, and the stick would be broken, so he had to tape it together. He was like, I don't know if this is going to work or not.
Get all the shards.
Right. I don't know if this is going to work. But he has to go to Doctor Strange. He goes to Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange says, I can put this, Mjolnir can only be put back together with magic, but it's going to cost you something. And I believe what he uses the rest of the Odin Force. He gives us some of the Odin Force. So this is how you get Thor back without having the Odin Force. He uses he trades the Odin Force for getting the hammer back as in one piece. And then he answers the call to, and again, he's still exiled, but he answers the call to help the Asgardians and stop.
No, he doesn't answer the call. He gets blasted by, because you remember Loki sent Doombots after Donald Blake.
You're right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
And he gets the burn analyzed by Reed Richards and says, what energy weapon could have done that? He says, one of 44 people. Well, who? And then they start whittling down the question. He says, did I tell you who Loki's been hanging out with?
Right. Do you know who your brother's hanging out with? He's hanging out with this guy.
Because they blew the horn for battle for all of Asgard,
right.
And Thor didn't hear it because Loki blocked it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. So, yeah. And again, it sounds crazy, but it's just a really, really great and well done story. Like, it gets you everything you need. You get murderous Doombots. You get Doom ripping the heart out of Kelda.
Yeah.
Like he is.
Then you get Balder fighting to get it back.
Yes. And it shows you how Balder is just, a lot of stuff happens while he's king that honestly just isn't really all his fault.
But the thing is, he had to be king for Loki to pull it off.
Right. He had to be king.
He couldn't have done this to Thor.
Exactly. No, because Thor, I mean, if you think about it, he wasn't bred to be king. Thor was. So Balder doesn't want any of this stuff, but he does what he has to do. But yeah, no, the battle, him going back to get the heart is just, the artwork in here, the writing in here. Hell, man, because Wilma gets killed, he goes to warn Balder, and he ends up getting stabbed and dies. And even
Bill, son of Bills.
Huh?
Bill, son of Bills.
Yeah. It hurts, man. I was like, man, I was not invested in these two, but by the time he dies, you're like, no, not Bill. Not Bill's a Bill. No, this can't be. And she's heartbroken. She's
What does she say to Doom? He says, how could you care for this thing? It was immortal, you're an immortal. She said that all you know now is that my pain will never end.
Exactly. Yo,
it's fucking beautiful writing.
No, it is. It's great writing. It's great writing. And it's just and it really sums up it helps, the cycle is broken, but you also see that there is a lot of, it takes a lot for Asgard to get back to where it was. And like all this is them trying to get back to being the guys they were were once. And yeah, man, it's just it's a lot. So
it's almost too much, but you're right. It's there. It's a lot. It's out there, and it's really well done. And I love how this story that was about bringing back the gods dovetails into this larger Marvel Universe story of Siege.
Yes,
because once you've involved Doom, you've involved Norman Osborn. You've now returned the gods to American soil, setting them up for the eventual battle versus Osborn's Dark Avengers and the entire Hammer organization. It's a story I will cover in more detail, I think, elsewhere probably. Have we done a comic book club on Siege yet?
No, we haven't.
We should. It's only 4 or 5 issues.
Yeah.
It's a fun little, we can knock that out in a weekend. But this story is basically the fall of Asgard in that Norman Osborn has his own god weapon, and it's named the Sentry, and the less said about that right now, the better.
Mm-hmm.
But the Sentry takes down Asgard. Asgard is brought to the ground outside Broxton, and afterwards, it is then restored to its rightful place in the Nine Realms.
Yes.
So thus ended the era of gods on Earth.
Yes. So do you want to
Loki dies.
Yeah.
Ares dies. Tyr comes back. Like a lot happens to set up this next realm of the Thor books, but and I don't want to speak out of turn here. The best parts of the next books are other people's stories. Like Loki gets reborn as a child.
Yes.
Odin comes back and has to deal with his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like Thor is there and they're involved in their Thor stories. But for me, even up to Fear itself, those are stories about the world around Asgard more than about Thor.
Yeah, I think they do a good job of setting up where you eventually get when you get to the Jason Aaron stuff. But I think a lot of that stuff, like you said, is because if you think about it, up until this point, everything's been about Thor. Mm-hmm. Up to this point, everything's about like eventually back in the stuff with JMS stuff, he finally restores and saves Sif. You know, so she restores Sif. Loki gets his old body back, his old male body back, and then again he sacrifices himself during Siege, I believe, right?
Loki does.
And dies. But like and Asgard falls. But then at that point, like you said, everything else is about building up the rest of Asgard. Because again, at this point, I think Thor is a relatively good space.
Yeah.
And so you need to build up everything else. You need to bring back Odin. You need to bring back Freya. You need to bring back all the rest of the Asgardian and then build them up.
The trappings of Thor.
Exactly, the trappings of Thor. And technically, wait, no, Asgard's still on Earth, right?
Did I miss that one?
Because I thought Asgard didn't go back until after I thought Jason Aaron brought.
You're right. You're right.
Because that's when So we stay on there until the war with Roxxon, and then that's when Freya and them take Asgard back. But so you still get the Gods of Earth stuff, but there's a lot of building of other people up and other characters up.
Thor dies again.
Yeah. That's just what he does.
Comes back again.
That's just what he does.
That's what he does.
Yeah, that's what he does. And one thing happened in the Siege thing, they brought back Ragnarok, the android, and Thor's not happy with that. No.
Thor whoops this shit out of that.
Right. You are not a Thor. It's like you're not a. Don't do that. Don't piss off Thor. And I like I said, I think some of the other stuff is stuff we can cover here and there, but I guess we want to just jump into the Jason Aaron stuff.
Oh my God! Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah. I knew you were kind of holding off.
God of Thunder, issue 1, and when I tell you that, and I don't want to overstate this because I love Walt Simonson's Thor run. From God of Thunder 1 to Thor 700 might be my favorite Thor story of all time.
Jason Aaron is writing the fuck out of Thor. All right, so this is where I'm gonna do the little HAW thing that I've been saving up. So, I had somebody come on to when I posted that Great Moments of White Privilege talking about those retailers complaining about, you're changing all the characters, you made Thor a woman and blah 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 blah. Listen, one of the things people were saying is like, hey, if somebody's watching the movies and wants to read about Thor, and they come in and Thor's a woman, they're not gonna know what to buy, which is bullshit. That's bullshit, right? But if you were a comic book retailer and somebody comes in, they want to read about male Thor, first of all, you should tell them that they can read any of these stories and it's fine. But the first thing you're going to tell them to do is before you get into, you hand them the new Jane Foster Thor stuff, you start with God of Thunder #1. Because it's all the same writer and it's all the same story. The stuff with Jane Foster Thor ties directly into what happens starting with the God Butcher story in God of Thunder #1. It's all connected.
Gore is also the greatest creation of my lifetime.
Yeah, Gore.
Gore
yes.
the God Butcher is possibly the greatest creation of my lifetime.
Yes, like all that story and what happens and because here's the thing: when people see, I love Jane Foster Thor. I think they do a great job writing that stuff I hear. But if you read this first run with God of Thunder, right? You first of all know that Jane Foster's not going to be Thor forever because you go to the future and you see that the only God left is Thor. It's Thor who
He's told you how the story ends.
He's told you. He's called his shot. like throughout,
like, yep, 3 Thors. What the 3 Thors?
Right.
Here we go.
Throughout the entire Jason Aaron run, he keeps going back to the Thor of the end of millennia, and it is only Thor. It's Thor left. It is him. He's the god left. He's the All Father.
And the granddaughters of the storm.
Yes, and his goddaughters eventually, right? Granddaughters. The goddesses of Thor.
No, goddaughters is a good pun. Goddaughters is a really good pun.
Yeah, it is. Here it is. So you already know that at some point. So when you get mad at Jane Foster picking up the hammer for a couple of years, I already know you're not reading Thor because Jason Aaron has told you how this is going to end. He's told you that Thor eventually becomes the god of thunder again because this is how it ends. He told you, like, I'm still waiting on Sun Thor. I'm waiting on Sun God Thor because I'm like, at one point, the future Thor says to the present day Thor is like, wait, have you moved to the sun and become the sun god yet? Just like, no, he's like, forget I even said anything. I'm like, I'm waiting on that. What is that going to happen?
You moved to the sun yet?
Yeah. Wait, when are we getting to that? So when you read this, so if you're going to read Jane, and again, I like the Jane Foster Thor stuff, but if you want to get really good context on this and what really happened here, you got to start with Jason Aaron's whole run because he's writing all of this stuff. He's writing like when people go,
it's his story.
When people go, I don't like that. The SJW writers who made Thor a woman. I'm like that same SJ a writer also wrote God of Thunder. He wrote Gore the God Butcher. Like he wrote all this stuff. It's his story. It's all one big part of one big story here. It's telling the same thing. So it drives me crazy. Because here's the thing: I'd never read this stuff. I read some of the. I never read the God Butcher story.
I wish I had your eyes. I wish I'd come in this fresh because we're going to get into all the details in a second. I want to say this: Scott Snyder is currently writing metal, and it is pretty metal for DC. It's a very enjoyable Dark Knight tale. It's a very enjoyable DC Universe tale. The most metal thing I've ever read is the 25 issues of Thor: God of Thunder.
Yes.
It opens with Thor, like literally issue 2. This is the word. I swear to you, I'm not going to describe any pictures. I'm just going to read the caption. Chernobog the Black, I presume, a bloody riderless horse and a headless god. Someone has ruined my fun for the day. The gods of the Slavs could have done this themselves, I suppose. Fought each other over Odin knows what. I once saw 2 gods slay each other over an argument over the day of the week, but that would not explain the nagging in the back of my head skull. One I've had since seeing the dead god's face in the waters of Iceland. I imagine it's the same feeling when the boar gets when the great horn sounds and the warriors rush into the trees. The moment right before the spears go flying, when the beast first realizes it's being hunted.
Mm-hmm.
Look, this is metal as shit. It's Thor on a winged horse holding an axe before he's worthy of Mjolnir.
Yes.
And when you think about it that way, when you think about the story of the 3 Thors, so this is the story of 3 Thors. It's young Thor who's vying to become worthy to live up to his birthright. It's our current Thor who is pretty much peak heroic age Thor. Yes. And then it's old Thor who's broken and beaten and the last god.
Mm-hmm. The last god alive.
And he tells one story of these 3 Thors fighting the same enemy. And it's fucking awesome.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it is an amazing story here because basically you find somebody's killing gods. There's something out there.
No. Somebody isn't killing gods like, oh, there's no faith anymore. Someone is straight up Dexter serial killing gods.
Yeah, there's a god serial killer out there, like lopping off heads,
draining blood.
Yeah, like, and when I say killing a god, so it's like, for instance, I think in issue 2, what we did, it was like, I can't remember, it was like the Icelandic Nords, and they were fighting maybe Scotland or something like that. And they show up, and Thor's there to fight the gods. Because basically in these old battles, it was the men fight the men, and then the gods fight each other. So Thor's showing up on the side to the Vikings like, let's go, we're going to go to battle, and we're going to fight the gods. So Thor shows up, and the enemy's like, you just wait until our gods show up. They're going to whoop your god's ass. It's just going to happen there. And they see a horse coming, and it's a horse streaked in blood. Like the god isn't
dripping
there.
God blood is the actual phrase.
Yeah, it's dripping god blood.
The words god blood, I'm like, I'm in for something special.
Yeah. And so Thor goes to find out where the rest of the gods are. And this is actually after the first issue, because this comes back in the first issue. He goes to some, I think he answered.
This is present Thor now.
Yeah, present Thor. In the first issue, answer the prayers of some So this alien world, this little girl on this alien world who had prayed to Thor to bring them water, because they were dying. They
praying
were
to any gods.
Praying to any gods.
She didn't know Thor.
She didn't know Thor. You're right. And he's like, wait, hey, why don't you pray to your own gods? Like, we don't have any gods. We haven't had any gods in a long time. He's like, that doesn't make any sense. So he goes to try to find her gods, and he finds where, like, kind of like their Asgard, and he finds their bodies, their stinking, rotting corpses, and that have been there for like 500 years, and are locked in a room. He's like, what the fuck happened? Like, what's going on here? And this gets into what I was saying before. I think Jason Aaron, like, JMS definitely went into the whole Thor being a god thing, but JMS really leans into the god part of this. Like,
what does a god mean?
Yeah, what does being a god means, and what is it when people pray to gods? What do they need? Like, he really gets into this stuff, and it's really, really important, and it really pays off, I think, in huge ways going forward. And that's when I think in issue 2 is when Thor first comes. The young Thor comes in face to face with Gore.
Gets worked by Gore.
Yeah. He gets his licks in. He gets his licks in too.
He does what he can.
And you find out that Gore is, his whole thing is mortals don't need gods. They don't need the gods. So he's on a mission to kill them. And Thor, at one point, young Thor, gets captured by Gore and is getting tortured by him because he's like, yo, so tell me where Asgard is. Let's start there. Let's go there. He ends up getting rescued by the mortal Vikings, and Thor does something. He cuts Gore and like stabs him with the weapon he has, the sword, I think. So
the Black Butcher, the weapon.
Yeah, and it's. What I love about this is it really expands the idea of what not just Thor but the entire world of the gods. You got a bit of this in Jurgen's run in Volume 2 when he was talking about when Thor became the Allfather and the other gods were like, "Yo, what is Thor doing? Like, you can't do this. Like, you shouldn't get involved. You shouldn't do. You're doing too much and things like this." But Jason Aaron really kind of leans into that. And brings to this idea that there's a whole, not council of gods. I can't remember what he calls it. What is it?
Pantheon.
A pantheon of gods. Like it's all the stuff here. There's the all knowing.
There's a library.
There's a library with a feisty librarian.
Yo, the feistiest. Hey, buddy, how about you reel it in? You watch books.
Right. Like the library, but I've always found librarians to be that way, right? Librarians can be assholes, and this is definitely an asshole librarian. It's funny. I was reading the Mighty Thor issues. I haven't caught all the way up on the latest Mighty Thor issues, but I was reading one, and they had that librarian dealing with Jane Foster's Thor, and I was just like, "Oh, you're still around, and you're still feisty." Yo,
they bring him back real well with the Phoenix stuff.
Yeah, it's like you're still around, and you're still an asshole. Oh wow, so good. So, yeah, so you're going through all this stuff and you're trying to find out who Gore is. And I can't remember, what issue is it? Is it what issue is it when they
find out what?
To go into Gore's background?
I think it was issue. Is it during the God Bomb? Is it after we've already captured our Thors?
It might be.
Because God Bomb starts in that issue 7.
Right. Damn it, I can't seem to.
The bottom line is there's a lot of segments here, but the first 12 issues are Aaron's first big story. And if you've never read Aaron's story and you're like, oh, I don't know if I'll love it, this is the 12 issues to figure out if you love it or not. Because, and I tell you this, and I joke not now, something that happens in issue 1 of his run is starting to pay off in issue 700 that dropped this week.
Mm-hmm. It's issue 6.
Sorry, issue 6. Okay,
yeah, sure. It's got Bomb Part 1, and we'll get into it. But keep going. What you're saying?
Yeah, I was just saying that the things that he brings to the table, the things that this is not someone who came on to Thor and said, "I want to tell one story." This is a guy who said, "I've got stories on stories," and he's planned on it, and he's made it work. And issue 6, you're right, is the story of Gore. It's why something would be so anti-God. What would give birth to this, and it makes fucking sense.
Yeah, like you actually by the time you finish issue 6, you're kind of like, he's not right, but he's also not wrong. Like Gore, what you find is Gore is basically somebody who him and his people, he never had their prayers answered.
Job.
You said what?
He's Job from the Bible.
Yeah, yeah. Like he sacrificed so much. He he lives with this forgotten planet. I don't even think they don't even name the planet. It's nameless. It's like 3,000 years ago, a planet without a name. You know, his mother and them, they're sacrificing to get food and water. They live under a hot sun. And his mother's like, hey, we're going to sacrifice to do this. His mother's killed by sand tigers. Then they cut years later. His wife is pregnant with their child, and she gets sucked into the ground, falls off the side of this cliff, and dies with her child. His either his son or his daughter. Yeah, his son. His son dies in his arms. Months later, as they're walking, they're trying to find shelter and water. He has all this stuff, and he finally decides to bury his son, and his people turn their back on him. They turn their back on him, and he's just left.
They say you don't bury your son because it's disrespectful to the gods. He's like, what gods?
Right. It's like, he says the gods don't hear your prayers because there are no gods. There never were. No gods in the sky. No gods that made us, no gods watching over us, no gods who give a damn. There's only us, and the sooner we accept that, the sooner we can. That's when they start throwing rocks at him, and they leave him there to die. And then he comes across 2 gods, one dead and one dying, that had basically been locked in combat, and they had, basically stabbed each other. And one of the gods asks him to help him, and he takes something that's leaking out of the other one and stabs him. And it turns out to be part of this weapon, this god-killing weapon. And he gets a taste of. He says, "It fell from the sky many years ago, and on a world without a name. I picked it up and butchered my first gods. And then as I stood there, baptized in their blood, a question formed in my simple little brain. I wonder if there were any more. And of course there were. So I set out to find and kill them all." And he goes out.
I love this issue because the part that you're reading right now, because it shows that not only, it says many centuries later, it provides the framing device of not only did he aim to kill a bunch, he did kill a bunch. And then he talks to this guy he's got tied to a wheel, and you're just reading along. You're just to answer your question, little God, and the God comes back and says, I asked if he knew where that weapon of yours came from, but you don't even know the name of the God you stole it from, do you? To you, it's just a sharp stick for pointing things. You're blind to what's true, which, by the way, is the only origin, beginning, or ending to this weapon we've gotten to date.
Yes, we have no idea where it came from.
That panel, and you say, hey, man, who would tell us that? Good question, because Gore asked the same question. You speak like someone who would rather die than be whipped. Tell me, what is your name, ragged wisp of a god? Because this god is beaten. He's beaten. He's skinny. He's emaciated. But then he says, my name is Volstagg. I was Volstagg the Violent, Lion of Asgard. And that's how they communicate you how bad this is.
Right.
Like, oh shit, that's Volstagg.
Right.
That motherfucker's skin and bone.
Skin and bone. Right. Right. And you see, and again, this is in the time of the future Thor, the future all father Thor that has a destroyer arm. I love that when the present day Thor comes over, it's like, is that a destroyer arm? When did you lose your eye? What the hell?
Stop asking fucking questions, kid.
Right.
grab the beer and shut up. Right. Old Thor's Odin on a bad day, man.
Yeah. It is so good. It is just such a great story here. And what you find is,
you learn that Gore's been not only murdering gods through time, but building a bomb that would erase all gods. Yes. And it comes back to a question that Thor presented in the beginning of this new series is, what are gods truly for? Why do we exist?
Right.
It's an existential crisis writ deity level. And we get this story of the 3 Thors, and then they finally come together because Gore has finally finished his bomb.
Yeah. And you get these three Thors together. Like I said, when first of all, when the present day Thor comes into the millennia, the future Asgard, and is talking to the old Thor, it's such a great coming together moment because Thor's like, he's like, there's this chamber behind the throne. You've been told never to go in there. It's like, yeah. Go in there. It's got stuff in there you're gonna need. I have weapons. I have my hammer. That's all I need. He's like, just trust me. Go in there and get there. So you're expecting as a reader, you're reading this thing and it's gonna go in there. It's gonna be all kinds of these special weapons. Gonna be in there. Open it up, and it's basically Thor's special stash of mead, of drink.
And not just mead, ale, wine of Dionysus. Right. Like it's a storeroom. Well, and you have to remember that. Old Thor kicked him out of like the high throne room that only the All-Father may enter.
Yes.
Says, no, go to the chamber. There's another place. You can help too.
Yeah. It's so good.
And I love how Thor's like, this cannot be right. Perhaps this is one of those alternate futures that those X-Men are always talking about. Right. Surely I did not grow up to become my father. Right.
Because old Thor is so disgusted with young Thor. He's so disgusted with young Thor. He's just like, oh my god, was that really
earlier? What are you now? I am the All-Father. You are still just wait. What are you again? An Avenger, guardian of the galaxy, the head of that ridiculous little order of yours? Have you moved to the sun yet and become a cosmic god cop yet?
Yeah.
What? No. Wait, if you're truly me, then shouldn't you remember this happening? Remember me coming here and meeting yourself? I can hardly remember to buckle my own trousers, can't I? And this is time travel we're talking about. That all manner of annoying rules governing this sort of thing. I've always hated time travel, and you always will. Like, that's literally what Jason and Aaron, like, don't think too hard about it, you fucking nerd.
Right.
It's time travel. Let's have a conflict.
It is so funny. He really has become his father. But it's like he's become his father, but not really, right? It's like he still has, it's still Thor. It's not, he looks like Odin, but you can tell he's Thor. Like it is so good. They're eventually joined by the young Thor, who smacks the present day Thor with.
They're not joined originally. He gets captured by Gore.
Right, you're right.
And so what Gore's done is he's taken certain gods and killed them to power this thing to drain their blood. But he's also captured gods throughout time to help build this god bomb. And he's said at the end of time, he killed some gods at the time. Like, when I tell you this is very metal and very cool, like, please read these issues. I know, Chris, this is your first time reading them. What did you think, like, having read the 25, what did you think of this, just this part of the story?
No, it's great. Like, it sounds crazy when you kind of try to retell it, like it's very confusing. Right. But when you read it, like the way that Jason Aaron structured this is done, it's structured really well. Because he's at times up till when all three Thors come together, you're getting each of the. So you get like 3 pages of old Thor, 3 pages of the new Thor, but they're all tied together. It doesn't feel like they're 3 separate stories. You can definitely tell they're telling one story, and sometimes they bleed into each other. But it feels very good, and it feels right. Like even the time travel stuff, because time travel stuff can get very crazy in comic books. Like it just can, right? This is done really well because it's not done. It makes sense. Like he's gone through time to get certain guys to do this stuff, but they don't overdo it so you get confused. It still feels very linear. So while you're traveling through time, you don't feel like you're jumping before like, oh, how did this happen? How did this happen? No. It's very, very, very well structured in how they did it. And I had no problem finishing it and going through it and following the storyline here. Like it is.
I was curious because I was reading it month to month when it came out, and so that's. Like literally, like you finish this, you're like, I just need the next one right now. Like,
oh, absolutely.
You're more hungry than you. I had never really taken a step back and seen how it was for other readers, but I'm glad to hear it's easily understood. It's interesting because when present day Thor meets old Thor, he says, I need to know what the hell happened here. What happened to Asgard? And he creates a really good synopsis. 900 years ago, he came here out of time, spewing black berserkers, an endless army of the beasts. We held them at bay as long as we could, but as our numbers dwindled, his power grew, and ultimately, I was all that was left. He killed them. He killed all of Asgard. He took them, enslaved them. He had his own world, a dead, blackened planet at the edge of space. He's building something out there. I know not what. For all these years, all I could do was watch from afar. He's kept me trapped here alone for 9 centuries, always surrounded by those damn berserkers, unable to break free, unable to die. I thought Asgard was my prison for eternity. And you see this because earlier in the issues, we see that young Thor's the first god to hurt him.
Yeah. And that's where why Gore has a thing for Thor.
Right.
Because he's like, he has this idea. It's like, you're basically going to be the last god I kill. You're going to watch me do this to everybody else. I mean, and you see in the future, because we should establish. So, the story of young Thor at one point is him trying to, he doesn't have the hammer and he's not worthy yet, and he's trying to find where this Gore, this god butcher is. Present day Thor story is him realizing that Gore isn't dead and that Gore's still around, and he needs to stop him, and he's trying to find a way to do this. The story of future Thor, though, is him, the Allfather, is basically him, like you said, you get this, he's fighting these, because Gore has this ability to create these what did he call them?
Black butchers.
These black butchers, and that is what Thor has been doing every day for 900 years. He gets up, he fights these black butchers, and he actually wants to die at this point. And at one point, they're carrying him. He's like, finally, you're going to carry me to Gore. I'll kill him. And he finds they have sat him back on the throne of Asgard. And it's just like, we'll see you again tomorrow, boss. And it's just, he keeps living this thing over and over. It kind of reminded me of what JMS did with showing us what Odin was doing when he was fighting Sudar over and over and over again. And it's not broken until present day Thor shows up. And then they both go, and then they're able to kind of break the siege, and that's when they go off to try to find Gore's planet that he's holding all these other all the rest of the Asgardians at, and the rest of these gods at. So yeah, like I said, it's a fucking fantastic story. And I guess we get into the end of it. It's when because at this point, even you kind of see what's going on here. Because Gore has a family and all this stuff, and you're like, Gore, you're gonna kill all these gods, but you've technically become a god yourself.
Volstagg calls him out. He says, when all the gods are dead, there'll be one god left, won't it?
And that's something that Gore doesn't want to hear. It's like, no, I'm not a god.
Right.
It's like, but yeah, you are. You're killing all the gods. You lived for a millennia. You're basically, made all these things. And so I kind of don't want to spoil the ending.
It's wild because I want to talk about it because it's an event. It's a show it's a comic that's things that happen here matter now.
Yeah, we got to. So, yeah. What you find is that Gore's family, the wife, the kid, and all these were just manifestations. They weren't real. Mm-hmm. He had created, because he was so lonely. Like in the future, he had created all these people, and what ends up happening is, the lonely part of Gore realizes that and comes to a conclusion that he's wrong in this, and that he is part of the god, and that he needs to be stopped. And so he ends up helping the Thor. He saves present day Thor, and they come together. And you really get, I think this is what you get out of the conclusion of God Bomb is you get why Thor matters. You get why Thor is the god of all gods, because Thor takes Thor basically destroys the bomb, and you got the panel. He ends up taking his hammer and future Thor's hammer, and he says,
which is awesome.
Yeah, and basically bringing them together. All through time, gods were killing every god who had ever been born or ever would be. There was no final, because the bomb had gone off. The bomb had gone off and started, and God throughout time started dying. And there was no final battle for them to fight. No enemy standing over them. No warning even. They merely fell to their knees, choking on blackness, their flesh falling apart before their eyes. Some knew why it was happening, most did not. But in their final cloudy moments, they all shared a common vision. A vision of one God with a mighty hammer in each hand, fighting at the heart of a bomb to save them all. And for that one moment that stretched across time, every god in all their universe closed their eyes and prayed to Thor. Yeah.
That's metal.
Yeah, it's metal as fuck.
Like, as you said that sentence, Metallica should have started playing.
Yeah, it's metal as fuck. Yeah, it's and they defeat Gore. They defeat Gore, and they save the day. And then each of the Thors goes back to the present time. But that's not the end of the story. with each of these, we still get flashbacks and Jason Aaron throughout the run. Like I particularly love the ones when you get to the last stand of Midgard, where you have future Thor against Galactus and all this other stuff.
Remember the time I beat Galactus one arm?
Right. But what really stands out to me is after this, you also get in I don't know if I guess Jason Aaron was trying to show this, and I don't know if it was trying to show just what Thor always did, but you start also get, I think I want to say the next issue, was it issue 13 after this, that you start seeing Thor going to all these different worlds. I mean, not all these different worlds, but answering people's prayers. Places on Earth and answering people's prayers, right? And part of me thinks, well, first of all, at the end of the run, he in 11, you have all these gods that have no place to go. Their worlds are gone, things like that. But they all come to Asgard, and not Asgard. They all come to Asgard in the future. And so Thor's like, hey, look, I know a place where their gods can be used. And he basically has some of the gods come and be the gods of that one planet that he came to at first with that one little girl.
Because it's such a good, tight run,
yeah,
man.
It's such a good tie-ins. Like, yeah, and he sits with the little, like, it shows you why Thor matters and why Thor is different from all the other gods, right? And then in issue 12, Thor returns to Midgard, and he just goes around for most of this issue. And he's doing things for the people. Like there's this one where and they don't even really give you the backstory on it. He goes with this man and brings him his last meal that's going to be executed. You know, he goes around and like he just does different things for different people. You get introduced to Roz, the new recruit for S.H.I.E.L.D., who's going to be their environmental agent. Who plays a big part in later Thor stories. They bring in Jane Foster, and that's when she has cancer. They introduce her and bring her back to cancer. And what I love about this is she has a boyfriend. It was awkward because she's just like, this new boyfriend, Walter, son of Bob, seller of real estate. Methinks he does not like me. He's dating a gal whose ex-boyfriend just flew in from space on a magic hammer. You can understand that he feels particularly moral all of a sudden. Which later on he then takes Jane to the blue part of the moon to watch the sunset, and I'm like, yeah, dude. Walter's a little upset. Like Walter can't compete.
Walter's in the right. Like Walter has every right to be upset.
Yes, Walter is. So you get Thor out here answering people's prayers and not doing it in the way he did in volume 2. But just kind of like being there for people to let people know, hey, listen, I'm here for you. You know, like I said, he didn't rescue the guy who was going to be executed. No, he brought him his last meal and then was there with him when he was executed. He brought food to some people that were starving, and just to be there and to bring rain and things like that. It's like it's basically being the God that you would expect to answer people's prayers, right? When people pray,
he's a god.
Just being a god. So, and what's great about the way they wrote that issue is you then get cut back to future Thor, and he's him. I don't even know if it's Heimdall. It's somebody else. The Rainbow Bridge is prepared, and he asks him to take him to Midgard, and Thor goes to Midgard, and it's a wasteland. It's a complete wasteland. You're like, what the fuck happens in the future? And and so then we get into, I guess the rest of the run is basically focused on Roxxon.
Thor versus Roxxon.
Yeah, Thor versus Roxxon. And they kind of bring in the they lean on the environmental stuff as well. Roxxon is basically becoming Dario's making this into a giant environment. He's basically causing environmental disaster. I think at one point he says, yeah, we introduce in the Atlantic, we introduce invasive species so that people can only buy, so it'll cut down on fishing, so people can only buy their fishing from us. And he's basically doing things, he's offering things like clean energy on one hand, but he's dirtying it up on another hand. And Thor is working with Roz to kind of bring them down. And it does not go well, particularly for Broxton.
No.
Because, again, Thor's a god, but Earth has his rules and his laws, and Roxxon...
And Roxxon's got lawyers, like,
right,
for days.
Right. And what they end up doing is buying a huge stake in a lot of the stuff in Broxton. And there's a giant fight, and what ends up happening is Freya and the Asgardians think that, hey, it's just time for us to leave. She'll leave Midgard, and you did the best you can to help these people. And Thor actually gives the people, because the town is basically destroyed.
Yeah,
there's nothing left. It's razed. And Thor basically brings his castle from Asgard and brings it down and gives it to the people of Broxton and says, hey, listen, there's not much I can do, but you guys can live here. And I think Jane at one point asked, I think she either Sif or somebody's like, yo, whose castle? Who's like, what is that? What building is that? It was like, yo, it's the biggest castle, one of the biggest castles in Asgard. It's like, whose castle is it? He was like, who do you think? It's Thor's. He gives it to the people of Broxton because, like, one thing they really did,
Thor.
Yeah, and what they did a really good job of making the people of Broxton matter, and I don't really get that. None of them really blame Thor for this. Like, they love Thor. Like, this is not like I said, when you got the Jurgens run where it's like the people were like, oh no, it's time for you guys to go. You guys can go.
Yeah, it wasn't like Thor, hero or menace.
No, this was like, no, they love Thor. Like, they were like, yo, no, the Roxxon people were the ones that were wrong. They basically bought out the town, and they were evil. And so Thor was like, these are my people. I'm gonna try to do the best I can to protect them. But one thing they had to do was they had to leave. So they move Asgard back into the Nine Realms on the Tree of Life. And,
Asgardia now.
And it's now Asgardia now. So, and I guess we go into, because I didn't cover anything outside. I know what happened during was it Original Sin, but I didn't cover anything else before then. Was there anything of significance?
Okay.
Before
no, not really. The main body of the work was, there's the stuff that happens in Uncanny Avengers, which is another book Rick Remender wrote, tied into his Uncanny X-Force run. Yeah. And it's the Unity Division of Avengers. It's Thor, Hulk, Havoc, Wolverine, Scarlet Witch, Rogue, Wonder Man, Captain America, and I'm probably forgetting someone. But it's really good. It's just another self-contained story. It's a really good Thor story. It tells about, there's a lot of young Thor in there too, and it gives the origin of his axe Jabberjorn.
Yes.
But the next big thing is Thor arrives on the moon, finds Uatu dead, and learns about the 10th realm and his sister, who's Angela for those of you who read 90s Spawn comics.
Yes. They
brought Angela to the Marvel Universe, and she's now another daughter of Odin, who lived in the 10th realm.
Because Odin just could not keep his dick in his pants.
Your dick is not your friend, Odin. And her story is actually pretty interesting in the Marvel Universe, as she now rules Hell and has deposed Hela, which is going to set up huge problems for Thor 700 and what goes next. But yeah, the major story is that out of that, Nick Fury reminds or tells Thor as to the secret as to why he becomes unworthy. He says, "No god is ever worthy."
Yeah, he tells him Gore's right. Which by the way, they do a good job of. You don't find out what the secret is until I think Unworthy Thor. So
it's years.
Yeah,
like it's real time years.
It's years. So at that time, I got the Original Sin panel, which is great because it's basically Nick Fury kind of whispering like, "I'm gonna take you down with a." He's like, "Same to you, big guy, but I'm afraid this is gonna hurt." See, so I see you've got a sister, and I also see you have access to the Watcher's secrets. How? Learn from this hurt, Thor. Learn and be better for it. Never forget, it wasn't that punch that took you down. That despite all your strength, in the end, you were beaten by a whisper, right? And I think it's true. Like, I think what he's saying here, like, it makes Thor. It goes back to what I think Thor's always been in the back of Thor's mind. That how much of Gore, like Gore was wrong for killing these gods, but was his fundamental idea right?
Played on the doubts that Thor already had.
Right. And
but compounded with seeing himself as a young and old god.
Right. And the other thing too is it kind of like people go, oh, yeah, they made Thor unworthy, blah, blah, blah. But if you think about it, this is almost like a self-imposed unworthiness where like Thor himself thinks he's not worthy because he really believes that, hey, maybe we aren't necessary. But that in itself, when you think about it, kind of makes Thor worthy because no other god would think like that, right? No other god would be so worried about this and think about this stuff, but Thor would because he actually cares. Which makes him such a powerful and important god in this universe. So, yeah. So you get the hammers drops there, and Thor no longer becomes worthy. He can no longer pick it up. We'll get we later find out the new Thor, woman Thor, Jane Foster. During this time, you also get the Hickman run of which I love that just because you get that one moment where Thor has the hammer for if he be that unworthy.
Universe Thor?
Yeah, the alternate universe Thor that has the unworthy hammer. And then when he's fighting the last battle, he can't pick it up anymore. He's about to sacrifice himself, and he becomes worthy, so he can't pick up the unworthy hammer anymore.
I'll tell you what, man. We're not going to touch on much of that Hickman run, but those series of comics where it's he and Hyperion, who truly just understands what Thor is coming from as a god.
Yes.
Their friendship was awesome.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to go back and reread. I didn't read it for this stuff. Yeah, it's too much to go through on this one. And we did a comic book club on that stuff. So if you're a premium member, going to read that stuff. It's really, really good. I'm gonna have to go back and reread it myself just because it was really good. But that was one of the moments that stood with me because when you take Thor becoming unworthy and what's happening there, and you take that scene with him all of a sudden becoming worthy again and not being able to pick up that alternate hammer. It shows you again why Thor is so important and what separates Thor from all the other gods, because he's always worthy. He's always willing to make the alternate sacrifice. Like one thing that we didn't mention at the end of God Bomb is he dies.
Yep.
He died. He sacrifices himself. The present day Thor sacrifices himself and dies, saving the world. And again, it's not the Odin Force; it's the Thor Force now. He's like, son,
like, we've been calling it for 10,000 years. Don't fuck it up.
Right. Basically, he's like, listen, I've had this longer than my father did, so now it's Thor Force. So the future Thor saves him, and I love how they wrote us like, Thor died, and in 3 days he wrote us again. I'm like, yeah, see, this is why you can't do this in a movie.
This is very pointed.
Yeah, I'm like, this is why you can't do this in a movie, because people aren't ready for Thor being Jesus.
They're mad as shit.
People got mad at the Man of Steel, and again, it was heavy handed. They got mad at the Jesus imagery in Man of Steel. It's like
always been part of Superman.
It's always been part of Superman, but with Thor, it's not even like imagery. It is what it is. Like he is a god
who grants wishes and rises from the dead, who wielded two hammers at once. I'm sorry, issue 11 is probably the most Thor thing I've ever read.
Yeah, it is just he rises again. I love it. When we go back to when they're fighting Roxxon, at one point, Agent Roz, she's fighting. I can't remember who she's fighting. Yoshida Corporation, right? And she almost died. She's on the phone with Coulson, and all of a sudden Thor shows up, and they keep teasing her about Thor being her boyfriend, right? And Thor shows up. She's like, did he have a tracker on me? How does he know I'm here? And Coulson goes, I may have prayed a little bit to Thor. And so that's how, and they don't shy away from him in this. Thor shows up when you pray for him. You pray to Thor, he shows up. I don't know if you can do that in a movie right now. In the environment we have right now, I don't know if the mainstream is ready for that. I know I am.
You can't do it.
Huh? I
know you can't. I know for a fact you can't do this. I'd love to see him try, but you can't.
I would love for them to do it, but I know you I just, whoo, boy, man. Them think pieces? Whoo, goodness. Goodness, man. Like, I'm sorry. This is why they make the movies the way they do. And this is why they kind of made him more of an alien, because if you make him a god, you have to lean into the best Thor stories are him leaning. They're either the Walt Simonson stuff, like I said. I think the Walt Simonson stuff, the difference between that and this stuff is that stuff was felt, like you said, more like a sci-fi fantasy adventure.
It's straight up Jack Kirby.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi fantasy adventure. You can pull that off. But this the JMS stuff, the Jason Aaron stuff, this is This is religion. This is God. This is you're leaning into it. This is God Thor.
I want to read this from issue 11 again, because you mentioned it, and I think the words hit what you're talking about. All throughout time, gods were dying. Every god who had ever been born or ever would be. There was no final battle for them to fight, no enemy standing over them, no warning even. They merely fell to their knees, choking on blackness, their flesh falling apart before their eyes. Some of them knew why it was happening, most did not, but in their final cloudy moments, they all shared a common vision. A vision of one God with a mighty hammer in each hand, fighting at the heart of a bomb to save them all. And for that one moment that stretched across time, every god in the universe closed their eyes and prayed to Thor. Like, that's it, man.
And the artwork on that, it's just
it's a one splash page of Thor slamming the hammers together. Like, it's awesome.
It is. I like it. I'm sorry.
It's so cool.
It's good, man. It's so good.
Like, if you like your comic books big, bombastic, and explosive, Jason Aaron's run is for you.
Yeah. And then that takes us to current time. Like I said, the Jane Foster Thor stuff. You had the Unworthy Thor, and now is it back to being the Mighty Thor with 700, or is it just Thor?
It's Thor. It was Thor 700, and what's happened is, and I'm not going to spoil 700, even though I really, really, really want to. So the rows that have gotten us here. Thor tried to get his hammer back. The hammer chose Jane, so she is Thor now. Mm-hmm. He's convinced his father to leave her alone. Says, whoever the new Thor is, you must leave her. I've given her my name, my blessing. The hammer has chosen her. And so Thor's on a quest to prove that he is indeed worthy. While this all happened, like Chris mentioned, Secret Wars happened, and another Mjolnir fell from the skies and landed on old Asgard. It's the one of the ultimate Thor. You remember reading those books, the one that looks kind of like an axe.
Yes.
And what's been given birth now is there are three Thors. Just like there were three Thors in the beginning.
Yes.
The unworthy, the god, and the king. We've now reached the place where there's the unworthy, there's the god, and there's the rabid war Thor. Volstagg has been able to take a handle of this hammer, and he's driven to destroy the fires of war. But the problem is what Aaron's done, and we mentioned Broxton, and we mentioned, I think, Gore. He set up the War of the Realms.
Yes.
And he's empowered Malekith to set up all these things, all these assailants against Asgardia, against the gods, against Thor. And now you're going to see why Thor matters, what Thor matters. Have you read 700 yet?
I haven't read 700.
Oh, okay. All right. Biting the tongue. Now, what you'll understand is that they set up three pictures. They set up the Thor who wants the power again. He wants again to be worthy. They set up the other Thor in Jane Foster who needs to stay worthy to stay alive. Her cancer's still killing her, and every time she turns into Thor, she wipes out the chemo. And then you've got the last Thor who does not want the burden, but it has it thrust upon him. And it's going to take, I wish you read 700. And it's going to take at least these three Thors to stand against the things that are coming. Between the War in the Realms, between the Mangog, between the death of the Fates, the death of the Norns. Jason Aaron's done something here, and I don't know how much longer his run is. He could say this is the last Thor story I'm telling, and it's going to culminate all of it, and I would stand, applaud, and advise you all to do the same.
Yeah.
Go out and read the 25 of God of Thunder. Go out and read every word of Mighty Thor. Go out and read 700. Go out and read the Unworthy miniseries.
Yeah, because the rest...
He's done something very special here.
Yeah, the rest of the God of Thunder, you have him forming the League of Realms.
League of Realms.
League of Realms. Yeah, Malekith coming back and becoming a huge pain in the ass. When you read, if you just started reading the Jane Foster Thor stuff and you see Malekith there, you got to go back and read God of Thunder to get how he got to that point and where he is, because he was just going around murdering fucking elves. He went on a murder fucking spree, and it was there's a lot going on. It's a lot going on there.
And I'm being intentionally vague about some of the Aaron stuff, and I apologize for listeners who want to come in and get that and be able to pick up the next issue as fresh as possible. One, I don't know when this is coming out, and two, it's so good. And when I tell you that you could probably, and I wouldn't advise it, but if you wanted to just read the Aaron run, the JMS stuff, in rereading it, it touches me in a place like the God stuff that he does is really, really powerful. But if you wanted to read it, God of Thunder 1 and just follow Jason Aaron through that, you could do it. And you get a very full picture of a very beautiful story that's going to come out to be the most metal thing I've ever read in my entire life, including but not limited to the original Simonson run of Thor.
Yeah. If I was to recommend, especially for the second part here, if you wanted to get into it, like I highly recommend at least the first 12 issues, and then I think issue 700. The first 12 issues of JMS, issue 600 to 603 of that JMS run, but you can skip that stuff if you have to.
Yeah,
skip it. Start with the Jason Aaron run. That's God of Thunder 1 through 25. Then you can go. Then you can go right into the Thor run.
Thor volume 3, I think.
Yeah,
or 2.
It might be volume.
Whatever one that runs up to Secret Empire or Secret Wars, excuse me.
Yeah,
and then comes out of it.
Right. And then there's the Mighty Thor and then the Unworthy Thor stuff.
Which is a miniseries.
Unworthy Thor is a ministory. It's only like 4 issues. And then the Mighty Thor stuff is the current stuff, I think, with Jane Foster, and also tells the story of this. Because it's just so good. Because, like I said, we kind of skipped over it, but like I think it's in the first God of Thunder stuff is it is the God of Thunder stuff. The story with old Thor versus fucking Galactus. You know?
I can't wait for it to happen. I'm going to spoil part of 700 for you because it doesn't matter yet, but it's going to. But yeah, we need to talk about that too.
Yeah, it's just like so much of that stuff. So just
and they made Malkith a real asshole.
Yeah, no, he's
like the way he comes back to life is really like the fact that he was guarded by venomous spiders. Like it's really it's a lot.
Yeah, he is terrifying. But yeah, here's the thing. I don't even feel bad about not going into too many details about this stuff because when we do the character corners, we usually don't get into that much stuff on the more recent stuff. But the Jason Aaron stuff is probably some of the best written stuff. It's really good. Like
I've got my hands on. I'm in God of Thunder, the third volume right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right when the League of Realms is about to start, and it's so well done, man.
Yeah, all of it is done really, really well. Like the League, he basically forms a god version of the fucking Avengers.
And the Godvengers.
The Godvengers, and they go out to try to stop Malkith. And there's a lot of stuff here. Loki's back, and that's interesting. Like a lot of stuff going on there. Like I love that. I was reading the Mighty Thor this morning, and Loki's back, and he's talking to his dad. Like his dad, the Frost Giant. It's like, yeah, you know what? You were dead for most of my adult life, so now we can have father and son time. Like it's just so good. It is you're gonna really want to read this stuff. It's all really good. And I'm sorry if you're one of those people, SAW's a reading comic, I can't read female you're just an idiot. I'm sorry. You're an idiot. Like this is
the most metal thing I've ever read in my entire life.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You gotta read this stuff. So anything else you gotta say about this, man?
That's it, man. I just implore. This is one of the ones where I kind of want to shut up and let you guys read. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I cut out a lot of. I figure like, and I was doing this when I was going through some of the research for this. I was like, we're gonna skip over a lot of details, and like we had to cover some of the spoiler stuff in God Butcher and God Bomb, just because they kind of set up for telling you about how we got to where we are. But there's so much other stuff you got to read throughout this stuff, and there's so many things that will surprise you, and that you really need to go out there. You get the basic idea of where we are with the Thor. Without getting the details, I'm just going to tell you to go out and read. And here's the great thing about it: almost all of this stuff is on Marvel Unlimited right now. I think most of the recent stuff, the more like the last few months, you have to go and get. But you can read almost all of Jason Aaron stuff on Marvel Unlimited right now. So if you're listening to this, stop listening. Make sure you subscribe. Stop listening. Go and read the stuff, and then you can come back again and just keep listening and tell us how much you like this stuff. Because I know at some point we're going to do a character corner on this stuff. I mean, not character corner, a comic book club on this stuff. Like I'm definitely going to want to do a comic book club on Jason Aaron's run. I think I might wait until he's completely done with it.
It's going to be at least 2 or 3 parts.
Yeah. It's got to be, because it's going to be at least 2 parts on God of Thunder.
Right?
Like it's gonna be at least 2 parts on that one. So yeah,
honestly, and same with God of Thunder, and I love the first part with the gore. The second part where he kind of redefined the Asgardian, like the way the world works.
Yes,
it's just really like, and it's just really well done. I'm a huge Jason Aaron fan.
Oh no, I am. I love what he's done here.
Southern Bastards is great.
Yeah. Like even down to like because basically Odin kind of gone crazy. And Freya and her kind of becoming the All Mother and saying, hey, look, man, you haven't been around. Like I said, you got to go out and read this stuff. It's like he's done a great job of. It's kind of like we said when we were reading the JMS stuff. After the JMS stuff, people started fleshing out the other characters around Thor. What Jason Aaron did with his run is he's made it so that he does it all at the same time. You flesh out the characters around Thor and Thor himself, like to the point of I'm at the point where I don't know if Loki's good or bad.
The answer is yes.
Yes. Like it's to that point. Like Loki does something and you're like, see, I told you never trust him. And then he comes back, you're like, wait, well maybe I don't know who to believe anymore. What is going on here? Like it is a really, really well done run. And like I haven't felt something like this run with Jason Aaron and Thor since like I would say Scott Snyder and Tom King's run on Batman.
Yeah.
Like it's to that point where this is when you give somebody a full run to tell their story with their character and you say, hey, you know what? If you want to get weird, and you got our full backing to do that. That is what Jason Aaron has done with Thor, and it is fucking amazing. So
I feel like Marvel's giving people a lot of leeway to tell their stories lately.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what makes it so great. And what great, and this is how we'll end this is. Everything's connected with Marvel when you do this stuff. So the stuff, when you read it, it ties so well in. Like, the JMS stuff comes in only because Ragnarok happened. And the other stuff happened. Like, at this point, I almost feel like there are almost, particularly for the main characters, or maybe on some of the side characters and small miniseries here and there you can avoid. But for the main characters, their main books, there aren't issues you can skip. There aren't stories that you can skip. Because they turn into things like we mentioned Batman. What Tom King did with Batman, where you have this character Kite Man that shows up. You're like, who the fuck is Kite Man? Until you end the war of jokes and riddles when you realize, no, it's fucking, oh shit, Kite Man is actually a legit.
Fucking Kite Man.
It's a fucking Kite Man. It's like, you're like, oh my God, it's real. Like, that's what they've done with some of their bigger stories. And people go, well, I didn't like this because it's like, you're looking at it in a small box. You have to look at the big picture and read all the story. You got to read what came before it. And thanks to Marvel Unlimited, you can. So, all right, folks. I thank you very much for listening. We will. This will come out, like I said, the week of Thor Ragnarok. So enjoy. And right now, the movie's getting great reviews. So hopefully, it'll be a great movie. The next character corner you'll get, I can say this because we already have it recorded, will be our Batgirls Part 1. Okay. And that included, we already recorded that one. It will be Babs and Stephanie. Those will be the first two Batgirls we talk about. And then when we do that, we're going to do a whole new slew of kind of like doing this thing of us recording a bunch of them in a row. So we might do that again. We'll do the second part of Batgirls, and then we'll jump into maybe Batman, or we'll do the Summers Brothers, and we'll figure some stuff out. And we'll record a bunch of them, and we'll get them out that way so that we can stack up our stuff. So again, folks, thank you very much for listening. Subscribe to us, Character Corner, on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google, and then Google. You can get us also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/MTR Network. You get all our stuff there. Subscribe. We almost have 600 subscribers on there. We're trying to get to 1,000 hopefully soon. So just keep subscribing. And if you have any questions, you have comments or anything like that, MTR Network. Not MTR Network. M-Trailer Reviews at mtrnetwork.net. And we will read that on air next time we're here. So again, folks, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, we are out of here. Peace.